Hey guys, happy Friday. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Coach Alexa. I'm a WAG coach here, and I also do a lot of work with our coach certification program as well as coach supports. So I basically support a team of coaches on our team as well. I'm super excited to be talking to you guys today. I haven't done one of these in a while. Um, But the topic that I chose for today is going to be my own personal nutrition obstacles and how I overcome them. And I just thought this would be a cool topic because I think a lot of times people think, or clients and other people think that like, because we're nutrition coaches, we kind of have it all together and we don't struggle and, we can't really relate to the struggles that clients go through. But the truth is like, we all struggle just the same as you guys. And for those of you that maybe you don't know this, but every coach here at WAG was also a client first. So all of us 100% know everything that you guys struggle with, and we can relate to it. So I thought it would be a super cool topic, and hopefully it will help you guys because some of these things I personally see a lot in my own clients as well. So I thought it would be great to A, talk about it, and B, give you guys some ways to overcome these obstacles and just how to combat them when they come up. So yeah, I'm gonna dive right in. I have four things to go over with you guys today, and I'm just gonna I'll copy and paste some of the things in the comments just so that you guys have an idea of like what I'm talking about. But and then if you guys have any questions at the end, you can go ahead and comment on this video and I'll go back and answer them after, just for the sake of time. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is snacking. This has always been a problem for me, even when I was younger. Not necessarily a problem, but just something that I tend to overdo, I guess, and just kind of, I'm very mindless about it. And like I said, even when I was little, this was a problem. I would come home from school and I would immediately go to the fridge or the pantry. And my mom always used to tell me, like, test your stomach, like, are you actually hungry? And that couldn't be more true today because I like notice this with myself so often. I'm like looking for food and I'm not even hungry. And I know that a lot of my clients experience that too. So some things that like I guess I find myself doing often these days, I guess, is so bites without tracking. Again, a really common thing that I see with my clients. Wanting some of like my husband's meal if he's like eating right next to me, or if he's eating something that I'm not eating, and like grabbing like chips or pretzels out of a bag and just like, oh, it's only a couple chips, it doesn't matter. Again, like that mindless, like, oh, it's fine. Am I hungry? And then just as an example, again, looking in the fridge because I'm bored, like looking for food, seeing like as if I forgot what was in the fridge, just out of habit or just because, yeah, exactly, because I'm bored. So the thing that I can like put together with all of those things, or I guess like relate to all of those things, is that they're all habits, essentially. Habits that can kind of tie into like not being mindful of why I'm eating, and kind of along those lines, like I don't need to eat, but I'm around that food and I'm thinking about food, therefore I want to eat. So the thing that I like to keep in mind, like just tying back to all of this, is that I'm not actually hungry. And this can kind of come down to a number of things. And your environment is a huge part of that. So like if you have food on the countertop, or if you keep baked goods on the counter, if you're looking at those items, you know, if you're around the house or late at night, you're going to want those foods, even if you're not hungry. So some ways that I combat this is I don't keep foods on the counter. I keep foods that are like snacky items like chips or maybe like trail mix or dried fruit or something. I keep it out of reach because if I am looking at that item on my counter or like in a pantry, I'm going to want like, you know, one bite or just a couple bites, even if I'm not hungry. So I also try to eliminate, I call them like trigger foods for my home, where whereas I'll be way more likely to overeat them. For example, chocolate, sweets, which brings me to my next item. More on that later, but you know, just think of those like highly palatable foods, processed foods. And so I try to keep those either not in the house, or if I do buy things like that, I will make sure that I portion them out into like one serving size bags, or just make sure that they're a single serving so that I can either like track them easily or just like be a lot less likely to overeat them. And then so if I do keep food on the counter, I will keep like more nutrient dense foods like fruits or veggies that don't need refrigeration. I'll keep them on the counter, or like in my fridge, I'll keep those in the front of my fridge so that they're the first things that I see if I open the fridge and I'm like, you know, bored and just want to look in the fridge to see if there's any food that I can eat. So if I do end up wanting to eat something, it's way more nutrient dense and it's more likely to fill me up longer too. So that's kind of all I have with that. Moving on to my second item, I have a huge sweet tooth, and this again has been a thing since I was very young, and not in a bad way. I just really loved sweets and I love chocolate. Even like when my dad would make me lunch, just like going to school, he would put like a little Godiva chocolate in my lunch and call it my vitamin. Which I like really loved because it helped me feel like it was okay to have chocolate. And I know a lot of times like that's kind of how bad relationships with food start. You know, we categorize foods into good or bad, and I'm very thankful for that because I have a very good relationship with food and I don't categorize those good versus bad foods. But piggybacking off of that, I've just kind of always like known that I like sweets and I've just accepted it. And the one thing that I've just had to practice over the years is moderation and balance, obviously. And just also, like I was talking about before, kind of hacking my environment so I'm not tempted all the time. Because again, if I kept chocolate all over the house, I would be way more likely to eat it. So yeah, that's definitely huge. And first things first with that is that I don't ever restrict myself. So if I want chocolate, I will eat chocolate. And I see this a lot with clients, you know, like cutting out certain food groups so that you don't have to be tempted by them. And while this works to some extent, for me, it just really does not work, because if I know I can't have something, I will want it more and more. And that's just not healthy for me, and it's not in my mind. And for most people, I think it's not a sustainable relationship with food, and it's not a sustainable way to eat for life, or even for like a small period of time, because it just kind of ends up with you wanting that food more and restricting that food, which is just not always a good thing. So with this, something that I've learned is that a lot of the times cravings are just like fake hunger. And it's something to keep in mind, because I think we're just like surrounded by food in this world that we live in. And most of those foods are not very healthy. So the kicker here is that like most of the time when we see those foods or when we're around those foods, we're not actually hungry. And for me, those foods are sweet. So like if I'm around those sweets, I'll probably want them. But like, again, it's like tapping into my intuition, like, am I actually hungry? Do I want this food because of like X, Y, and Z? Is it just in front of me? That's why I want it. So some examples of that, I like to call these like fake hunger cues. Um, the first one is visual hunger. So those are cravings that you get from just like seeing something right in front of you. Like maybe your spouse brought home ice cream and you didn't want ice cream until you saw them eating ice cream. So that's that visual hunger. You see it and you want it. And then mind hunger. So just like thinking about food because we know we have access to it, or we're like craving it for whatever reason, and just kind of spiraling in your head about food. And then fatigue. So this is something that I've actually experienced a lot too. Like if I'm really low energy or low blood sugar or something, I kind of come to the conclusion that I need food right then. And like it'll just help me feel better, but it's obviously not the case. And then emotional hunger. So this is something that I also see a lot that I've dealt with as well. So dealing with an emotional situation and looking to food, specifically processed food or sweets, to cope with whatever you're dealing with, which we all know is not necessarily going to help. So physical hunger, I mean, we all know what it feels like. It's the rumbling in your stomach. You can feel it in your rib cage. It's your body telling you that you need food. And that is what we want to be mindful of. And what I've learned to be mindful of when I am either like around those fake hunger, those fake cues, or if I'm craving sweets and I know I shouldn't have more, I'm just mindful of my true physical hunger in my body. Because if I can sit there and pause and ask myself like, hey, are you really hungry right now? Or do you just want food because, insert whatever, then I'm way more likely to make the right choice. So false alarm, hunger cues, and environment, two huge things to focus on there. So moving on to my third item, saying no. And this is something that is super, super hard for me. For those of you who don't know me, my family is Lebanese. And the hardest thing to say to a Lebanese woman who cooks for a living is, no, I don't want to eat. And so like I come from that type of culture where eating and cooking is literally like their purpose in life. They love cooking, they love feeding people. It's just like their pride and joy. So if I'm in that situation, during a holiday or just like a family meal, if I say no, it's almost offensive. And I mean, most times you're literally coming into their home so that they can cook for you. So yeah, it's become really, really tough. But I've learned to navigate this pretty well because I've been doing it for so long, and I've also been really honest with my family, which I'll get to that next. But yeah, and so a lot of the time, I guess, so my family specifically, like they have no idea that weighing and measuring your food is a thing. I mean, it's just like they come from a different part of the world and a different time. So if I told them that like, I was weighing and measuring my food, they would just be like, what? Like, why are you doing that? And I've had to explain that to them. But it's just like something so foreign to them. So that's kind of another difficulty that I've dealt with. But to just piggyback off of saying no, I have a few things that may help you guys for similar situations. And again, like it doesn't even have to be that your family is from a different part of the world. Like maybe people just aren't exposed to dialing in their nutrition in this sense. So it's tough for them to relate and to really understand. So hopefully these few tips can help you guys with planning the next time. So something that I always do before I go to either a holiday meal or just a meal that I'm having with my family, I go in with a plan. So if I do know what is being cooked, I will use my typical like estimated entries in my FitnessPal and log those items, and I'll like reverse maneuver my day around those items. And if I don't know what's being served, I will usually just eat really lean proteins and veggies, minimal carbs and fat leading up to that meal, only because for me, I know that most of the foods that my family cooks are going to be higher in fat and carbs. And if you're Middle Eastern, you know that we use olive oil a lot. So everything is doused in olive oil, which makes it delicious, but it's just not always macro friendly. But either way, like whether you know what's being served or not, eating lean up to that meal is a really safe bet. So I personally always do that regardless of what they're cooking. And so I mentioned honesty earlier, and this has been something that's been like 100% really, really important. I always tell my clients this too, because I think it's important to just be transparent about your goals, and like you shouldn't be like ashamed of your goals or like things that you're working towards, because at the end of the day, if you're on this program, you're trying to improve your health and your fitness and your body. So yeah, so I have always been super honest with my family. They know what I do for a living. They know that I compete in weightlifting, and they usually always ask me like if I have any competitions coming up or something. And that's like kind of my chance to like, be like, oh yeah, I can't have dessert because I'm trying to be good, or just being honest so that they're mindful of your own goals too. And if you're saying no because you truly don't want something, that's a different story. But if you're just trying to navigate the meal, like it's okay to be honest. And so dessert is another topic that I wanted to bring up, because this is like a big thing in my family too. They always love bringing out dessert. Luckily, some of the time it's just fruit, which is great because it's healthy. It's usually macro friendly. But honestly, most of the time I don't really plan for dessert unless it's something that I really, really think it's worth it. And like for me, that would be maybe something chocolate. Yeah, usually only something chocolate. But usually I'm really full after a big meal because again, I'm like planning for it, and I'll usually eat something dense in carbs or fat. So I'm really satiated at the end of the meal. But again, if I truly don't want something, I'll tell them like, hey, I'm really, really full. I don't really want it, or I don't like X, Y, and Z. And usually they're fine with it. Like maybe they'll give me a little pushback, but for the most part, if you're honest, I think it always works out really well, especially if you're full. But another thing that I've done is like if I really do maybe want something, but I'm full and I just don't feel like eating anymore, I'll ask them if I can take some of whatever they're asking me to eat home so that I can eat it once I'm a little more hungry. And that way I'm not offending anyone, and I'm also making them happy and myself happy, because A, I wanted some of it, and B, they just really love feeding me, which is like awesome, but also can be tough. So yeah, I hope some of that was helpful. Oh, and so again, if I do end up eating something chocolate, it's okay for like, I personally am okay with having like 2 bites and stopping, but I know like a lot of times we can get that like all or nothing mindset, but just know that like taking a couple bites of something and like calling it there is like totally okay, especially if you're planning ahead and have like lots of macros left, or maybe you're like eating more mindfully for that meal. Yeah, so that's another thing. So last thing I have here is the number on the scale. And this is something that I think we can all agree that kind of messes with our head, and we struggle with it and just hate seeing the scale fluctuate. I mean, who doesn't? But yeah, so this is something that I personally, like I go back and forth with struggling with it, but if you guys don't know me, I'm in a weight class sport, so I compete in weightlifting, and you fall into weight categories, and if you most people sit like slightly above their weight class. I personally sit slightly above my weight class, so I have to cut for weightlifting meets, and it stresses me out if I get too far above my weight class, and because I just mentally, I like to sit in a certain spot, just so that I know my cut won't be hard, and if any adverse situations arise, like hormones or like flying to the meet, that I'm not, seeing my weight spike too high. So I mentally just really hate seeing it fluctuate too high. And yeah, it's just something that like I've always, again, like I shouldn't I shouldn't be struggling with it, but I'm human and I do. So, how do I cope with this? I honestly, sometimes if I'm feeling too caught up in the scale, I'll just like stop weighing in for a week or so. And if I'm noticing that I'm like obsessing over it too much, I'll just play it by ear, like maybe a week off or a little bit more, is the kind of break that I need to just like get my mind off of it and like restart and, just like get my mind right. That's something that I've done in the past and still do from time to time, especially after a meet, like when I'm either just dialing in my nutrition really hard and cutting, and maybe I competed and I did really well, like, and I just want like a break. I'll take that next week and just not weigh in. And I think that's something that's totally okay for most people to either like decide on themselves or talk to their coach about, because if you're really feeling like it's screwing with your mindset to the extent of like you're really like anxious and just it's getting in the way of your like productivity and just your self-talk, I think it's really important to be mindful of that and give yourself space. Another thing that I do is if I'm feeling too caught up in the scale and what it's telling me, before I even weigh in, I'll ask myself how I feel that day, whether it's by like looking in the mirror or just like how I feel in my clothes, how I feel in general. Maybe I'll take a progress photo and just like remind myself of what I look like first and that I'm not, like gaining fat. That's something that I can decide before I step on the scale. So the thing that is most important here is that like nothing changes from before you step on the scale to after you step on the scale. Your feelings can still be the same. It's just a matter of making sure that your mind is in the right place, because a number that is measured by gravity should not tell you how you feel. Only you can do that. So that's just something really important to keep your focus on and to try out before you step on the scale too. Another thing is journaling. So honestly, if it's journaling, I think is just such a useful resource for anything, especially if the person between your ears is giving you too many negative things to think about. So if you just honestly get curious about that behavior and write down your thoughts, maybe write down the things that you're thinking about too much when you're stepping on the scale, like just get it all down on paper, because once you really understand like, what's going on and the why behind it, you can start to rationalize those thoughts a little more. And, I feel like half the time we get those negative thoughts popping into our head. They're just kind of irrational, like you kind of get on like this spiral of like, oh, I'm getting fat, like and you kind of just start just thinking things that are not serving you and that, it's only going to make things worse. So, yeah, that's just kind of something to try out and see if it helps you. I know it's helped me a lot, like maybe just practicing gratitude or something. Just writing down 3 things every day that you love about yourself, you love about your body, and go from there. Yeah. And then last thing, this is like so important. I personally always remind myself and my clients of this too, that you literally can't control the scale at all. No matter how hard you try, you can't control it. And you could probably eat the same thing and drink the same thing and train the same way every single day, and it's still going to fluctuate, which is just like, it just kind of puts things into perspective. So it's worth reminding yourself that only focusing on the things that you can control is the most productive. So you can control what you're eating. You can control your water intake. You can control your sleep, your activity, your training, your self-talk, your behaviors, your actions. All those things you can control, but you cannot manipulate the scale on your own. So point blank, like, it doesn't serve us to be caught up in something that you can't do anything about. And again, way easier said than done, but it's just a reminder that focusing on what we can control is going to be the most productive thing that we can do. And it's probably going to help our self-talk and just like our overall mindset a lot better too. Yeah, so that's kind of all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, or if you want me to maybe answer a question that is similar to what I talked about, you can go ahead and post them in the comments, and then I'll get back to them as soon as I see them. So I hope this helped someone out there. I hope it helped a lot of people, actually. Just kind of proves that us coaches struggle too, and we go through the same thing that you guys go through, you know, from battling the scale to just mindset and eating out and family. And yeah, we've dealt with it all. And yeah, I hope this helped. And yeah, you guys have a great weekend. Thank you.